To our public meeting of the GO Group. My name is Hal McMillan. I'm the chairman of the GO Group, and we've got an exciting evening here today. I want to tell you that we're going to visit about a number of things, and I was visiting with Charlie Atherton a little earlier, and he said anything we may say or do as we would be talking about any conversation, don't take it personal, Hal. And I'm like, Charlie, I wouldn't. We have things we need to talk about, and it's passionate, but we don't need to get personal in any way. So I'm going to ask for our best behavior today. I'd ask that you silence your cell phone, and if you have a call or something you need, just ease out of the building and go ahead and take that call out there. We're also going to ask that when you have a question, I'm going to get this microphone to you because your question is very important. We want to make sure it's well heard and well responded to in the answer. And also, if there's any sidebar conversations going on, I'm going to please ask for your attention because everybody's, any kind of question anybody has or what they're talking about is very important. This is our vision statement that we came up with. A vibrant, prosperous region with a great quality of life, Southwest Louisiana, the place to be. Anytime you have these multi-billion-dollar projects coming to an area, we're definitely excited about what's going on, but we're trying to get prepared. If you look in the inner circle right here, this is our GO Group Steering Committee, and there is a number of elected officials here, so I'm not going to even announce any one elected official. We're just going to move through this meeting without any formal introductions of any elected officials. I am going to be the master of ceremony. I'm going to try to keep things moving forward and under control. We have a lot of information to go over, and we want to make sure that this information's gotten out as quickly as possible. With that, I'm going to introduce Brian Beam, who is going to introduce our GO Group Director. Brian?
Thank you, Hal. And I know a lot of you have already met Karen, but this is the first public meeting opportunity of the GO Group to formally introduce our GO Group Director. A little background first. We recognized way back when the GO Group started at the end of, beginning of 2013, at some point we recognized it's to really have some time to spend and get some things done, we need a staff person. And we waited a good while to make sure we knew when, and the timing was right. And over the last several months, the Calcasieu Police Jury and the City of Lake Charles entered a partnership to fund the GO Group Director Office. And we had a great process, a lot of interest in the position, but the panel selected a wonderful candidate. We couldn't be happier. And I want to give you just a little background on her and have Karen come up in just a moment. But Karen Clapp is the GO Group Director. She started March the 2nd, earlier this year. And her background is varied. She has a strong background in marketing and management. She spent the last 7 years as the marketing director at West Calcam Hospital. So she's very familiar with this parish and region. A lot of good experience at the hospital in marketing, but also management. She comes with 2 degrees from McNeese, a management and marketing degree as her undergraduate, and also a master's of business administration. And I can tell you, if you were to ask her what is her job description, it's probably the word juggling would fit the best, because she's had to do so much in a very brief time just to get caught up. And I think there's a lot of excitement, which is a good thing, but everybody knows now we have a full-time person, and they're finding out who she is, and just trying to keep up with the flow of information is a big challenge, but she has handled it with a lot of grace and an exceptional amount of competency, and we couldn't be happier. And I'd like Karen to come on up and say a few words as she gets started.
Hi, good evening. As Brian stated, my name is Karen Lambert Clapp. Prior to joining the GO Group, I worked at West Calcasieu Cameron Hospital for 7 years, where I served as the marketing director. And in that position, I was able to meet so many wonderful people who can really influence change in our community, and I think that's what helped me in showing my passion and my want for this position. I can't thank the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury and the City of Lake Charles for their foresight in creating this position. I think it's very needed for our community, and I'm so very excited that I was chosen to fill this position. I look forward to working with all of you in community-driven change for our area and this anticipated growth and this industrial expansion that's coming, and it's already here, as you will hear in just a moment. But I just want to thank you once again. Thank you for your attendance and your interest in our community. And like I said, I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Karen. She's going to do a wonderful job. I call up Mike Hayes with Sasol. He's going to give us an update on the Sasol project. We are going to hold the questions to the end. We got a very full agenda. And also, if you look around at our steering committee, you'll see the school board's not here tonight. They have a school board meeting. But I can tell you we get a lot of response and a lot of participation. Mike Hayes with Sasol.
Yes. Okay, as we get training up here on how to operate the technology, thank you, Hal, for the kind introduction. You kept it nice, yeah. It's my pleasure to give you a presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have a lot of slides, 75 or so, and they told me I had 10 minutes, so let's see how I can do this. Okay, where we are, and I'm not going to read this to you, but where we are is we're working on several key elements to our project. One of those is the dock. We're about to start on the heavy haul road from the dock to the plant site so that we can start bringing in our large heavy equipment. And if you've been down Houston River Road, you'll notice that we've spent a lot of time and effort on infrastructure, site preparation, site clearing, and those are the big activities that are going on. Before we get to the question and answer session, and those of you who were impacted by all of our dump trucks, we're working on an internal heavy haul road that hopefully by mid-year will have most of the dump trucks off of the city, off of the parish roads. This is our list of contractors, and we will be providing this to the Go Group in an abbreviated form, or this presentation, so that it can be posted on the website. But basically, we have, with the exception of Fleur Technique, who is the EPCM, Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Management contractor, we have a number of subcontractors to them that are actually doing the work. They're all Louisiana contractors, and they're hiring Louisiana contractors to work for them to the greatest extent that we're able to assure. When you look at this on the website, you'll be able to see where to go for Sasol jobs, for Fleur Technique jobs, and for contractor construction jobs. That's not the focus of today's presentation. What is the focus of today's presentation is really where we are. Site preparation is in progress. You see, you look at the site. This is a picture from one vantage point, looking from east to west. You see that there's a lot of clearing, a lot of ground construction, utility relocation, and other activity underway. Future main substation is being installed, so we actually have forms being installed. The ethane cracker, we're putting piling in the ground, and that's essentially what you're seeing here. Future linear low density polyethylene unit, we're making progress on the site prep for that, and we'll be putting piling in the ground for it soon. On our heavy haul route, we need a heavy haul route because our approach is to modularize our equipment to the greatest extent possible. What that does for us is it minimizes the number of temporary construction jobs, which is a real advantage for the area. It's kind of odd that we talk about minimizing the number of temporary jobs, but by minimizing those temporary jobs, we minimize the need for worker villages to the greatest extent that we can. We recognize that some are going to be needed, and at Sasol we do support them, but this approach of modularizing will give us the opportunity to reduce the number of temporary workers that have to come in and out of the site. The heavy haul construction, heavy haul route basically runs from the Calcasieu River to the plant along Sulphur Avenue, Houston River, Sulphur Avenue to Guillory Street, and then up Houston River Road. And where we are in progress on that is we're doing electrical relocation, and we'll start, basically start overlay work, hopefully when the rain stops, if the rain stops. So spring of 2015, we'll do those improvements. You know, when we start the overlay work, there will be an 8-week period where we only have traffic going eastbound on Sulphur Avenue, Old Spanish Trail between Guillory and Sampson Street. Alternate routes are being worked on, but basically that's the approach that we reached agreement with DOTD that we can do. Fall to late 2015, we'll see our first heavy equipment coming through, and you'll be able to see it from here because it's going to be pretty good size. So the construction dock work is well underway. If you've been down Miller Avenue in the past few weeks, you'll note that there is quite a bit of change on that, what used to be called the old pipe yard. The dock in the river is under construction. We've completed pile driving for that, and they're putting the actual dock in as we speak. Module transports, typical module 25 by 25, but the largest ones will be over 50 feet, which is equivalent to moving a 5-story building down the road. So it'll be a slow process, but we'll try to keep the community as highly informed as we can during this process to maximize both traffic flow and safety. So this is an artist rendition, and you see the Burger King sign. That sign will remain in spite of all the rumors you've heard. We're not buying Burger King in Westlake. And this is what it would look like from the rear. And it's a pipe rack, but the equipment will be different shapes, sizes, configurations. Should be pretty interesting process to watch. The carriers that will be hauling the equipment will be transporters that are multi-axle transporters with lots of wheels. They'll go anywhere, depending upon the size of the load, from 3 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. And since each one of these loads is approved by DOTD, we'll be able to basically let the community know when each of those transports is going to happen, because the transport time is also approved by DOTD. We have some communication resources. I'm sure some of you may have heard the Sasol text commercials on the radio. Sign up. It'll give you the information you need to keep you moving. We do not intend to block Sampson and Miller Avenue and Westlake at the same time. So you know, having the information to know what the most effective route is will really benefit you in the community as you move along. We also, one other point, we have a community information line. It's 24/7 live operators. So if there are questions, issues, challenges, someone is available to talk to you. Construction updates will be on our website. I know this is a hard slide to see, but again, we'll have this on the Go Group website at some point, this presentation very soon, so you can have an idea of what it looks like. And so if you have questions, concerns, or you want to be in the information loop, we have some ways to do it. The website, the Sasol text, and the community information line are all out there and available. Hal, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We'll do questions at the end. Of course, Mike will be available after our meeting for comments. He'll stick around, too, for a little while. Stevie Trahan from Cameron LNG is going to give us the next update.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Like Hal said, I'm Stevie Trahan, External Relations Manager at Cameron LNG, and thank y'all for having me tonight. And we'll give y'all a quick little presentation on what we got going down there at Cameron LNG. Who is Cameron LNG? In the beginning, we were Sempra, which was the regas plant, and after seeing that wasn't going to work too well, we decided to do the liquefaction. So we formed a joint venture, and that's with GDF Suez in France, Mitsubishi Mitsui, and NYK, and they formed the new company, which is called Cameron LNG. The previous facility was called Cameron LNG. Now the new company is called Cameron LNG. It's a joint venture. And this is an artist rendering of our new liquefaction project. You can see the existing 3 tanks. That's there, the ship berthing area, 2 berthing areas. And if you look to the north, well, I say to the north, to the right, there's your 3 trains and your vertical flare at the far end of it. And I want you to take note of that vertical flare for the next few slides. Here's the liquefaction plot plan. And you see again the 3 tanks on the bottom, and you'll see trains 1, 2, and 3. Now you see to the far right on the channel is the ground flare. We've decided that instead of going with the vertical flare, which was 400 feet in the air, and could be visible from all parts of southwest Louisiana in case there was an upset, we've now gone to the ground flare, which will be less evasive to the public, and it gets it away from Highway 27. You also see on the bottom right there's a construction dock where the big stuff will be coming in, and to keep it off of Highway 27. That's just some of the things we're doing to alleviate traffic and things of that sort. So, and if you notice, trains 1, 2, and 3 are the brown color, and now you see trains 4 and 5, which are blue. We're now in the FERC process to get permission to build trains 4 and 5. And if you draw a line between trains 3 and 4, that's the Calcasieu-Cameron Parish line. So what you see now, if we go ahead and get trains 4 and 5 and get FID and decide to do this, which is a very good chance, trains 4 and 5 will be in Calcasieu Parish. So that's a big plus for for the parish in taxes and in jobs. And it's just another statement saying how everybody works together here, just parishes alongside one another, and it's all for the betterment of both, or I should say all. Okay, and here's now, it's currently under construction, and just to the north of the 3 tanks, the existing tanks, you can see the first train, the form for the first train is being cut out of the soil that's there. It's kind of rectangular shape heading from south to north. Right now it's all underwater, but it'll be gone before long. Been fighting that quite a lot here lately. Okay, right there. All right. Okay, so what are we doing for the public? Here's one of the things we're doing. We're having a continuous road cleaning process right here. Right here, we have a 5-man crew, or the contractor has a 5-man crew that all they do is clean the trucks and sweep the road. So this is Hackberry's answer right here to Don's car wash. These trucks, especially with all the rain and the mud, these trucks, before they come out onto Highway 27, they go through this wash rack. All the big stuff is washed off of them, and then they enter Highway 27. And we get calls frequently on it, and get them on our Facebook page, get them on our hotline, that the road's dirty, you need to do something about the road. I just washed my truck. Well, the sweeper gets it in gear then, and they sweep off Highway 27. So we try to keep this as clean as possible to keep the people happy. Something else we're doing that changed from when we built the regas plant. The regas plant's all on piling also, but they were driven. And you drive these pilings 40, 50, 60 foot deep. All throughout Hackberry and Carless, not all of Carless, but on the southern end of Carless, you can hear this pounding all day. It was about a year long. It took just pound and pound and pound. They were driving pilings. This is a new technique, just a couple years old, out of a company from Alabama, and they're drilling these piles. And this is the drilling unit right here. And what this unit will do, it'll set up and it'll drill these pilings 80 to 100 feet deep. And instead of when you normally drill a piling hole and the dirt comes out the top, what this particular unit will do, it'll pack the dirt on the side of the walls so no dirt comes out. And then if you look right here, these lines right here, that's your cement lines that go to the top of the unit and go down to the bottom of the auger. Here's your cement trucks with the pump unit right here. You unload the cement, put it into the pump, it pumps it down the line through the top of the tube, and as this auger, it's completed its digging, it's 80 to 100 feet down, it's coming out of the hole and the cement's going in. So it's all in one motion, and from what I understand, After he sets up and drills a piling, 15 to 20 minutes, it's done. He moves to the next one. We have 3 of those units on site right now. And here's an aerial overview of the whole project. The bottom is on the south end, the top is on the north. And you can see right here, there's the Ellender Bridge, so trains 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 and 5. Big project, a lot of things going on right now, and a lot of dirt work, a lot of civil work. And here's some interesting facts that I put up here. There's going to be an estimated 18,000 of these piles will be installed on site. 18,000 drill pilings. So you can imagine 18,000 driven pilings, what that would sound like. Peak construction, there'll be 4,500 workers on the site. The job site for the liquefaction project is sitting on approximately 500 acres. The regas facility sits on about 180 acres. And at present time, there's over 250,000 man-hours without a recordable incident. There's been approximately 500,000 cubic yards of soil that has been excavated on site. And that's not hauled on site, that's not hauled off site. That's moved from one end to the other. They take this, it was an old, along the channel where they pumped the silt for years and years, and they're taking these high hills, cutting them down, and moving this soil across it and using it, saving a lot of time, a lot of money. And presently there's over 200 pieces of equipment on the site, including dozers, excavators, dump trucks, and cranes, etc. There's about 250 people working out there, so just about everybody's got them a piece of equipment to run. There's a few ladies in the office, but just about everybody else is running a piece of equipment. So that's all I have right now, and we can answer questions later.
Thank you, Stevie. Appreciate you building a couple trains in Calcasieu Parish. Thank you very much from a police jury standpoint. With some organizational structures and roles, we're going to call up Travis Woodard with CSRS, and he's going to give us some update on that.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
We're going to, pardon me, who was that?
We had some other particular magnolias out here to give an update. You had a situation.
Oh, we do have others?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, Travis. We're going to do some updates. You going to sit down? Who would like to? Ernie Megelson or someone on from
Magnolia wanted to come up. I think
Magnolia. You want to come up? Ernie, you want to come up and give us a report, or was you prepared for that? Not at this time.
Then never mind.
Thank you, David. Travis.
Good evening, everyone. So going back to the last time the Go Group met publicly, there have been a few major changes to the structure of the Go Group, and I'm going to go over that briefly. The largest change is the introduction of task forces to the Go Group. And people say, well, Travis, you've got a steering committee that you can see here is very large. We've got a number of subcommittees that themselves are very large. Why in the world would you want to add another layer of people to the Go Group to work on this stuff? And my answer is pretty easy to understand in my mind, and it goes back to the marksmanship concept of aim small, miss small. With these large groups, it's really easy to begin to focus on too many things, and it can be hard to affect change. So with the task forces, we boiled things down to 4 groups, 4 task forces that are staffed with 5, 6, 7, 8 members of the community. These are not people that are part of the governmental structure. They're not part of the system that the task force may be studying or working with. These are people that simply are invested in our community and want to see changes made. And so by giving them a pretty narrow focus and a narrow mission, we're optimistic that that group in those specific areas will be able to make some real changes for us going forward. And so that's really the change organizationally that you'll see with the Go Group. The steering committee remains in place to provide oversight. The subcommittees continue to be active and continue to provide subject matter expertise to our task forces, and we'll get into that a little more specifically. But our task forces, so you've described what they're doing. What is their role? The first one is within the areas we've given them, and we'll cover that momentarily, what are you going to work on? We've seen there are so many different issues that face Southwest Louisiana as this growth occurs. What are we really going to be able to work on? What is our focus? Because if we try to do everything, we're likely not to do anything well. once they decide that, these folks can't operate in any sort of a vacuum. They've got to bring those recommendations back to the steering committee as the oversight, the steering of the Go Group. And then finally, once initiatives begin to take root, we felt it was very important for members of the community that are not part of the governmental structure, not part of the organizational structure, to come out and provide community-driven support to affect change. And that's a model that's worked well nationally in other communities, but it takes people within the community, not part of the system, to give that objective viewpoint that can really then begin to affect some of the changes that we hope to see. So then we've got Karen. She was introduced earlier, and I think it's important to understand what her role is and is not. Somebody's got to tie the task forces, the Go Group, all of the agencies that are represented on the steering committee, and the public together, and that's really probably Karen's largest job, is to make sure that everybody communicates and we understand what one another is doing. She's also got to interface between the steering committee, the task forces, the subcommittees. Once we get to the actual initiatives and hope to proceed into execution, somebody's got to orchestrate that and make sure that organizationally we're ready to tackle those initiatives. And then finally, provide administrative leadership to the Go Group. Just simply making meetings like this happen take a lot more than most of us realize. So some of the initiatives that I think you may see, the task forces are growth planning, education and workforce, public service improvements, and then special community-related initiatives. I'm not going to read all of the initiatives. You can see there are a number of different things. You're going to get an update momentarily from some of the task force leadership, but they're beginning to define what exactly do we want to work on, what are those things that we think provide the most meaningful change to our community going forward. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Hal.
And I'm going to call up Karen so she can come on up and give those updates for us.
Well, as Travis just stated, there are 4 task forces that are currently exist for the Go Group, and each are charged with the unique initiatives that can be potential impacts to the community. So what we've done, and most of these groups have met probably about 3 to 4 times. They're working actively on tackling some of these potential impacts and some of these initiatives, looking at ways that we can proactively solve some of these problems that we are anticipating we'll have. These task forces, once again, are growth planning, education and workforce development, public service improvements, and special community-related initiatives. For tonight's meeting, I will provide the updates for the growth planning and special community-related initiatives task forces, and I'll ask the chairpersons for the other 2 task forces to provide updates on their efforts as well. With regard to growth planning task force is headed by Mr. Brent Lumpkin, who serves as the chairperson for that. Other members of that committee include Alvin Stevens, Dick Kennison, Matt Young, Carrie Anderson, and Jim Wright. The Growth Planning Task Force has discussed at length many issues that Southwest Louisiana will likely encounter as a result of the upcoming growth and expansion of local industry. The scope of the group's work will require them to look at all areas of the region, more specifically where growth is anticipated to occur. However, such projections will require the group to look at current and past growth trends as well. This task force is in the process of requesting information from many area agencies with regard to development, permitting, and zoning trends, as they recognize the importance of gaining an accurate understanding of where we are now so that we can properly plan for how we'd like to see our communities 20 to 30 years from now. And that's something that we want you to keep in mind with these task forces. We're looking at long-term plans. We're looking 20 to 30 years out. You heard Travis make mention of some of the subcommittees that we discussed earlier. Those are looking at short-term items that we need to address, things that are happening right now that we need to address, and we can't wait to move on. Over the next 2 months, the Growth Planning Task Force will objectively look at the growth management process currently utilized in our area and will work to adopt best practices. This group will be involved and likely interact with every other task force as each deals with issues related to our future growth and enhanced quality of life. And you'll notice that I am reading this from a piece of paper only because we've had several different meetings, and I want to make sure that I accurately, or paint an accurate picture for you of exactly what they're working on, because there are so many different things that are happening right now, so many groups that are meeting, and I just want you to understand how many people are meeting to make sure that change happens in this area and that we're proactive. The next task force I'm going to provide an update on is our Special Community Related Initiatives Task Force. The chair for this particular task force is Mr. Rick Richard. He was out of the country. He couldn't be here tonight. Others who serve on that task force include Senator Willie Mount, Julio Galan, Sylvia Stelly, Brent Hawkins, and Willie King. The Special Community Related Initiatives Task Force has formulated and adopted a vision they feel wholly encompasses the purpose of their task force. Their vision has been identified as building vibrant economic cores. In working to accomplish this vision, the group's work will consist of looking at the entire 5-parish region, not just Lake Charles or Calcasieu Parish, and focusing on revitalization efforts in those areas. While their vision's broad, the focus is narrow, and they have already begun working on ways to make their efforts and this unprecedented economic expansion work in the favor of our local communities. After all, it will be vital for partnerships in the area to become more unified in both vision and effort to ensure that those moving to Southwest Louisiana will want to stay here. Over the next 2 months, the Special Community Related Initiatives Task Force will be working diligently to establish a clear path forward, and will use this time to gain consensus from others and do research in support of their focus and the best interest of our community. And those are the 2 updates for those groups. At this time, I would like to call up Mrs. Ann Knapp, who serves as the chairperson for our Education and Workforce Development Task Force.
Thank you, Karen. The Workforce Task Force and Education has zeroed in on 4 areas that we feel are extremely important. First of all, we think it's critical to enhance the appreciation of all education in the 5-parish area, but specifically career and technical education, as that will directly impact the obtaining of the workforce necessary for the tremendous growth that we anticipate. We are researching with our resources at CSRS what are the best practices in that arena. We also think that it is critical that we work with our area school boards regarding the preparations that are being made for the additional 5,000 to 6,000 students that we are expecting in the 5-parish area as a result of the growth that's happening. What types of curriculum as well as infrastructure resources are necessary for those students to be well educated. Thirdly, we are terribly concerned about funding for higher education in our 5-parish area and are researching with our resources alternative funding strategies for higher education that we can then work with those local institutions toward making sure that we have viable higher education continuously in the 5-parish area. And lastly, we think it's critical that there be continued alignment of curriculum at all levels between what industry needs with respect to the training of their workforce as well as what is being provided by the area educational institutions. As you can see, each of those are large areas and areas that we're going to rely upon a lot of resources from our community agencies and public bodies as well as from our technical resources at CSRS. Thank you very much. Sure, I'd be delighted to introduce my friend Mary Kay Eason, who is going to be coming up to present public service improvements. Mary Kay.
I'm Mary Kay Eason, and I'm the chair for the Task Force for Public Service Improvements. The GO Group Task Force for Public Service Improvements includes Dr. Darrell Burkell, Cade Cole, Lester Langley, Dennis Stein, and myself. I wish to publicly acknowledge and thank each of these volunteers for stepping up and serving our community on this task force. Some of you may have been present in this very room a few years ago when Dr. Williams was newly appointed as the president of McNeese State University. In his comments, he described the conditions for Renaissance. He went back through history and gave several historical examples, and then he very boldly predicted that Southwest Louisiana was on the verge of Renaissance. At the time, I had two thoughts. First, I hope he's right. Second, what in the world could it be? What could it be? Fast forward to today, and not too long ago, I read a report published by the Louisiana Department of Economic Development that said that our little corner of the state is, and I quote, at the epicenter of industrial renaissance. So it clicked into place. This is a tremendous opportunity for growth and prosperity in our area. Indeed, the eyes of the nation are upon us. We have a lot of work to do. We must move quickly in order to prepare Southwest Louisiana for the influx of population and the many, many new business opportunities that will present themselves not only in the oil and gas industry, but in every business segment. I'm honored and excited to serve as a change agent in this process, and I'm confident in our task force members, all of our task force members, whose business acumen and whose vision I respect very much. As a group, our task force has met and identified 5 key issues to be addressed by the Task Force for Public Service Improvements. We recognize that this is a fluid and changing process, and I see that we may also be taking a look at roads and recreation, but the top 5 that we've identified, at least initially, are airports, water, drainage, fire, and sewer. Our plan is to create a vision for each initiative, benchmarking against the very best models we can find. Our process is 3-pronged and very straightforward. For each initiative, we will identify where we are today, where do we want to be 20 or 30 years from now, and what do we need to do to get there. As a task force of citizens, we plan to think big, think long-term, and make recommendations that will bring Southwest Louisiana to an ideal state of affairs in these 5 areas, or 7 areas. Throughout the process, we will invite and seek input from citizens in the community, and overall, we will seek to eliminate inconsistencies in services, achieve efficiencies of scale, and be open to change that will benefit our entire area and help achieve our mission of making Southwest Louisiana a vibrant region with a great quality of life for all. I thank all of you for your interest and your involvement with the Go Group, and I cannot wait to see what we can build together for Southwest Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. All right, we're going to have steering committee reports on health and medical. Julio Galan is going to give us a report.
Well, thank you, and good evening. Bill Hankins and I serve as co-chairs of the Health, Medical, and Social Services Subcommittee, and we were tasked with beginning some groundwork to identify and promote strategies that support a healthy community. So we had several meetings where we actually identified gaps, assets, and opportunities in the areas of psychiatric services and substance abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse, mental health and mental wellness, physician shortages by specialties, ER and ER readiness and trauma services. And some global recommendations actually came out of those conversations, including use and continue to use and strengthen existing infrastructures that provide safety net services here in Southwest Louisiana and the region, including interventions as well as prevention. Recommendations included strongly promotion of mental health, mental wellness services during talent identification phases and onboarding processes. Clearly defined points of entry for services, not just medical services, but also mental health services. Promote and encourage work-life systems to support our new workforce and our existing workforce. Engage young professionals and young people in solution-focused planning. And on that note, several meetings have been had with high school-age kids that have identified current issues that they are concerned about, including teen suicide, child abuse, texting and driving, not their texting and driving, but our texting and driving, folks. And cyber bullying and bullying, to name a few. Some of their recommendations include work, internship, shadowing, mentoring opportunities so that they can be ready for the workforce and support growth and expansion, career exploration services, and youth development. So these conversations will continue, and again, we will welcome your feedback. Our job, again, is to do some groundwork so that we can identify, promote, and bring strategies that support a healthy Southwest Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. We're going to have questions and answers at the end. I can tell you we all had a long day. If you need to move around, you know, stay excited about this because these reports are very important. I can tell you I am thrilled that we have such a team of great people in Southwest Louisiana that are involved and volunteered to be on the GO group. With that being said, Matt Vizano is going to give us a safety report on behalf of the Sheriff's Department. Matt?
Thank you, Hal. First off, I'd like to apologize for the sheriff not being here. He recently had a minor back surgery and is still recovering, so I know he would rather be here than laying up on his couch. The GO Group Public Safety Subcommittee, if you're not familiar with it, is co-chaired by the Sheriff Mancuso and Dick Grimion with Calcasieu Parish Office of Emergency Preparedness. We did that because it allowed the law enforcement side to focus on those law enforcement related issues and Office of Emergency Preparedness to focus on first EMS, fire, etc., and all the other first responders. So let me talk about a little bit what we've been doing. And Karen saw firsthand this morning, we actually met this morning, and a cohesive group of all of your federal, state, and local law enforcement cooperating and talking about issues that's probably never happened in Calcasieu Parish or the 5-parish area. We talk about all of the issues, whether it be dealing with traffic, crime, trends, what's going on, what can we anticipate. We started by about 2 years ago creating an intelligence group that meets, and it's mostly made up of detectives that talk about what kind of crimes are happening, where are they happening, and what can we do about it. And then it just so happened we had started that when the GO Group came into existence, and that really took the phase of the leadership of each department. How can we structure our departments to deal with this growth and population explosion we're going to deal with? So then we kind of combined them and said, why do we have 2 meetings of 2 different groups so we all meet together? And I could tell you, we talk about every issue there is. A lot of concern, and I know it's a hot topic, is the influx of people that's going to come in. And we've been asked this question a number of times. Do we expect an increase in crime? Do we expect an increase in traffic? And the answer is yes. You can see that now. I see more and more out-of-state tags, more and more sitting at red lights, and that's just going to happen. My short answer is, for increase in crime, yes. There's always going to be a certain amount of undesirable population that's going to prey on us, and we expect that to increase with the increase in population. And we haven't seen a lot of that. Talking to some of your local agencies, they haven't seen a lot of calls for service that is directly dealing with the increase in population associated with the local industry, but we do have an increase in population, so there is more calls for service, whether it become traffic incidences or crimes in general. I know there's a lot of issues about the topic with workforce housing, temporary workforce housing, and I'm sure we've done a lot of talks about it, about the studies that your local agencies and the Sheriff's Office have done. Myself and a few others from the Sheriff's Office have traveled to the northern part of Alberta, Fort McMurray. We've traveled to the west end of Texas, Midland, Odessa area, and wanted to look firsthand at some of these temporary workforce housing things to find out what's going on. What is local law enforcement having to deal with? So we met with Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who is the local entity dealing with a lot of these industry, and the people associated with them. Met with the Sheriff's Office and the local police department in Midland, Odessa, and asked them what problems are they having. And I can tell you, we were surprised. And short answer is, when they're managed very well, there's very little impact. It was a solution to a problem that they had, and it is working for them. Are there problems? Yes. Is it a solution to it? Yes. So I'm sure I'll have questions, and I'll be more specific. I can say some of the things that we anticipate seeing are starting to take place. Some of the people, we know there's a certain amount of undesirable population coming in here that's going to come to work, come looking for work, and that is happening, not to a great extent, but it is happening. A lot of what we expect is increase in traffic, and I know there's going to be a lot of maritime issues. Mike Hayes talked about some of the maritime issues they're going to be having people come in, and LNG is another one. A lot of people from the industry side that aren't from here don't understand how big of a deal it is when you mess up the waterways around here, when you mess them up for recreational boaters and mess them up for recreational fishermen. Nobody's really brought it up, but we talked about it this morning. Maritime traffic and security zones around some of the industry that's going to be transiting back and forth from the Gulf. It's going to be a huge task, and I promise you that your local officials and federal and state are working on it. We're working hand in hand with the Coast Guard and Wildlife and Fisheries to make sure that that impact is as little as possible. But these are good problems to have. I know traffic is another one, and let me say, a lot of people have talked about, well, there's a lot of problems and a lot of things we can't do anything about. I know Department of Transportation has been to some of our meetings, and they're doing everything they can within reason to deal with some of the traffic woes. But I promise you, from an industry standpoint, the local industry that's coming here is doing everything they can to lighten the impact. We have, I think, about 12 officers a day working at the Sasol facility. I think we're going to have probably more than that at Cameron LNG, working with the Cameron agencies. Had discussions with a lot of others on traffic control, traffic congestion, to help alleviate some of the impact that's going to be felt with a lot of this traffic in and out of these facilities. So they're doing everything they can, and they're meeting with local law enforcement to try to help with those impacts. So we're meeting and talking constantly about what's going on and try to deal with some of the issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We're going to call up on the long-range transportation study for an update. Grant Bush.
Thank you, Hal. Matt did a great job there, too, of addressing a few of the things in transportation that I think we talked about a great deal in the beginning, and basically that's traffic management, you know, and that's going to be well, pretty much one of the things we'll have to do throughout this. I have a presentation. Karen asked me to show a few slides. She did want me to reduce it a little bit. Our long-range transportation plan is about this thick, so to put that all down in about 15 slides, you understand it's going to be a summary, but we do have a summary, and it looks like this here. You'll find it in the libraries in the area. I'll mention those at the end. And I had a few to hand out as well tonight, so please take one of those if you get an opportunity. And I'm going to go through a few slides now. and kind of tell you a little bit about the long-range transportation plan. Our long-range transportation plan is a plan that we update every 5 years. I'm Grant Bush, Executive Director for MCAL, but also the Lake Charles Area MPO. And the MPO is charged with keeping up with the 25-year transportation plan for the metropolitan area. Well, this time we partnered with Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, and we've been able to do a plan for the whole entire Calcasieu Parish region. That has not been done in the past for us. Also, this plan's time frame for doing an update came about the same time as our impact study that was done and all of the expansions that were being announced, and so it was a great opportunity for this update. Now, this plan is basically a volume 1 and a volume 2. Volume 1, you will see some of the things in this plan address the regional visioning process, demographics and data. Also looks at the streets, highways, public transit, bike and pedestrian. Then it looks at the environmental side of things, as well as what we do with staged improvements. With this, we have volume 2, which you'll see a lot more of the Calcasieu Parish-wide initiatives, and that would be like the parish profile, the access management planning, and typical roadway cross sections, things like that we did not have in the past. So that's going to be a big help. Now, during the process of doing the plan, there were 4 public meetings. 2 were visioning meetings, one held in Lake Charles and one in Sulphur. And this was where the public was able to come and help a great deal in the planning aspect. At the end of the visioning cycle, we had public hearings in Lake Charles and Sulphur to go over some of the things that the consultant that we had working on this plan put things together. As you can see right here, some of the things that we addressed were transportation funding priorities. What did the local community feel about putting certain things in a priority? They looked at the streets and accessibility, roadway construction, roadway maintenance. These are some of the top 3 that they chose. As we look at what they looked at on means of transportation work, needs analysis for transit, and also a ranking of transportation goals. Some of the goals that they chose were obviously quality of life, number 1, improved safety, and all the way down to conservation and energy. So it gives us a good idea of what the community wants to do with the federal dollars that come to our area. This is just another slide that you'll find page in the long-range transportation plan of what the public would like to see used on the federal dollars. Now, the maps that you'll see, there's many maps in the long-range plan, and that's a big help for us as we try to determine what do we have currently, what do we want to do with projects in the future. This is what's called a deficiency analysis map. What it does is it shows you where our highest traffic count is. That was where you'll find most of your congestion. As you see the red lines, you'll notice those are probably areas that you travel, and you know there's quite a bit of congestion through peak time travel. We do a 2020 projection of that, and we start to see what is it going to look like in the future if we don't do anything. And so we wanted to look at a priority of projects to reduce that deficiency. This map is what addresses that. This is basically a stage 1, 2, and 3 process. Stage 1 is for the first 5 years. It's the projects that we look at initially, and then we look at 10 years after that in stage 2, and then out to the 25th year for 2040. And so these are all of them together. These lines here show you red is the first phase, green is the second, and the third is blue. And these are the areas of prioritized projects for our area. If we break those down, and you'll see those if you review the plan, these are projects in stage 1. Some of these are currently either underway or have been completed, and then we'll working on a few other projects that will be in the phase this year, and trying to get some of those projects off the ground that'll help us actually with anticipated congestions. And this is a map of what it would look like. Now, as we go on to basically the second phase, which is the next 10 years after, these are project areas that usually are larger projects. They're more expensive projects, but they give us an idea, a prioritized list of projects to work towards funding and trying to make improvements out there. These are ideas. These are projects that the community and the officials have worked together through our subcommittee for transportation in the GO group, all together as a collective group in finding these priorities. And this is the third phase. Our long-range transportation plan can be reviewed at our website, which is mcal.webs.com. And you can also find the full plan, both volumes 1 and 2, at the libraries in Moss Bluff, Sulphur, Westlake, and the Ernest Street location. And we're located at the Seed Center on the 3rd floor, Suite 330. So if you need any further help out with looking at the plan, we have copies there as well. Please don't hesitate to give us a call. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. He'll be ready for some questions after a while. David Connor is going to be up here to release the temporary housing study. Travis is going to be right here behind him. This is a study we've been waiting for a lot of good information, and David's got it for us here today. Thank you, David.
Thank you. So in the last 4 years, the Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Alliance has invested probably somewhere in excess of 5,000 staff time hours. In addition to that, government agencies from the 5 parishes and other leaders and stakeholders probably have another 2,000 hours invested, and we're going to spend about $300,000 with our contractor, CSRS, on what we have named the Southwest Louisiana Housing Study Strategic Plan and Implementation Strategy, dealing both with permanent and temporary housing. The overall plan will be released here in the weeks ahead, but tonight we are releasing the findings of the temporary housing report. One, because we're nearing the end of the overall report, and so the probably primary reason is because temporary housing has become probably our most time-sensitive issue as it relates to housing issues. Why is that? Well, we've had 2 major construction projects that have started here at the end of the year, and that's Cameron LNG and Sasol. That doesn't mean that we're ignoring the Cheniere project. That has been a major mega project going on for some time in extreme southwest Cameron, but we are dealing with the Cheniere LNG project and the individual plan for Cameron Parish. So what are we going to get out of this? The components of the overall plan are a study, which the first phase of that study was completed in 2012. And that's the data gathering, that's kind of getting the situational awareness on the ground of what was happening in housing. But as we approached the next phases, these projects started to come along, and we kind of thought we would let the dust settle on these projects, and it kind of never did. So in addition to that, the GO group was formed, and we kind of were waiting on, I guess, the formation of all that to happen. But toward the end of 2013, we went forward with our next steps, and that's the strategic plan component, and the implementation strategy was the last component. So from all of that, we are going to be providing a narrative on each parish, a demand model, which basically tells us what the demand is going to be in permanent housing and temporary housing for the years ahead. When are the jobs going to come online? When is the population going to increase? And what is an inventory in permanent housing to meet that demand? That demand model is also a dynamic model in that as new projects come on or timelines change, we can adjust that demand model along the way. So we're not getting just a snapshot and stopping there. In addition to that, we've created a web portal, which is a GIS-based design, a very sophisticated tool that's going to allow us to put together the suitability models for where housing makes sense in the 5 parishes. Each parish will have a pullout. We will have an overall comprehensive study, but each parish will have its own pullout for its own use. So in the effort as we moved into 2013, it made sense that the Alliances project move into and roll into the Go Group Housing Committee, and I was named chairman for that. When we did that, we also increased the makeup of what we have formed in terms of our committee. We added, for the study, we needed a lot of government officials for data gathering, but as we moved on to the planning component of this, we added folks from housing developers and bankers, realtors, home builders, apartment association, convention and visitors bureau, and several others. Many of you in this room have been involved in this process. Particularly, we had a very strong team, probably our top professionals in planning in the 5 parishes, but to let you know how well we were represented on the review team, which is looking at the overall reports, to customize this, to make this truly a Southwest Louisiana project. Misty Clanton from Beauregard Parish, Brenda Bird from Allen Parish, Marion Fox and Tracy Fontenot from Jeff Davis Parish, Claire Hebert from Cameron Parish, Lori Marinovich and Jennifer Wallace from Calcasieu Parish. Also from our staff, Morgan Turpin was the housing report director, and Daphne Richard was the research director. I do have to thank the Office of Community Development and Disaster Recovery Unit for funding this project post-hurricane disaster funds. But at the very end, when we didn't think we had enough money, Sasol stepped up, gave us a letter of intent to be able to do the project the way we really wanted to do it. And so thanks, Mike, and your group for that. This temporary housing report that you're going to get is pretty short. We could have written volumes about temporary housing, but we really wanted to make this a to-the-point and concise, readable version. But I'm going to introduce Travis. Where are you here? Okay. I'm going to introduce Travis Woodard. You met already. It was interesting that while we were putting out our RFPs, we got proposals back from across the country. As we were looking to hire our group, Sasol was also doing his RFP for the regional impact study. So y'all are aware that they have done that regional impact study. It was not a getting together and saying, let's hire the same guys. We had very strict restrictions on who we could hire with HUD restrictions on those funds. But we do feel like the hiring of CSRS and Sasol doing it validated our choice. And so we got a Louisiana company, and we got a DeQuincy boy. He's a native, and so he knew us. In this report, the findings that he put in here affects his family just as much as it affects ours. So we're glad to have you, Travis. He's been a great team member, and so I'll have him come up and give you the findings of the report.
Thanks, David. So to get started, I want to go through what I've heard as a very common, there went my laser pointer, concern over the last couple of weeks that's come out as I visited with folks. And it's been something like this. Travis, you know, I understand you say all these numbers, you talk about all these projects. I'm driving around and it's a little busier, but I don't see a whole lot. I hear about all these worker villages. We've permitted a couple. None of them have gotten built. Nobody needs this housing. Why are we in such a hurry? Why do we need more of these things? What's going on? And so as I sat and I've chewed on that, I said, well, let me make up an analogy that maybe puts that in context a little bit. So imagine you're the admiral in Pearl Harbor years and years ago, and you've got this little guy that's sitting in a shack on top of a hill on one of the islands, and he calls you and says, boss, I know I just got this new radar toy, and I know you really don't quite believe that it's going to tell us what's coming, and I know I've had a lot of false alarms of planes coming that were really birds, or missing some of our planes that we knew were there, but there's like 150 planes coming, 200 planes. I don't know if it's right or not, but what do you want to do about it? And the technology works. We think it's good. It's the best that's out there. We've tested it. It's working right now. Do you make a decision based on the data and the facts that you have, or do you wait and see what happens? Looking back, I think we know what they chose to do and what happened. So that's my challenge to you on temporary housing, is you're going to hear a lot of data, a lot of statistics, there's a lot of numbers in the report, but it boils down to, are we going to make decisions based on the best available information, or are we going to wait and see what happens? So as we talk about temporary housing, very briefly, we've got to cover the supply and the demand, both from the industry side and then the supply side of what we have available locally. We're going to talk a little bit about worker villages, but that's not the only solution. And so we're going to paint a picture of what some of the community impacts may be for alternative solutions, because you do have choices as a community. We're going to talk about our recommendations, and as David said, my recommendations here have been made. They certainly impact my family. It's a little bit easier now that the DeQuincy Worker Village is off the table, but I can tell you my recommendations don't change. I'll stand by them. I'm happy to debate them, but it's truly what I believe is best. And then finally, we'll wrap up with questions and answers. So when we talk about projected demand, this is not something that I just fabricated out of thin air. Our team took the employment projections from industry, from the contractors, the EPC contractors that some of the major projects have engaged, and we've used that to model what we think the most likely employment will be in the coming years. We've also looked at the available labor forecast for Southwest Louisiana. How many of our local people can we use to fill these jobs before we have to look to Texas, to Detroit, to other places? How many of our people can we put to work first so we don't have to deal with temporary housing? And finally, and I've said it in every presentation I've given, our forecast is dynamic. Industry is going to continue to be dynamic with their projects. Their schedules are going to change. The magnitude of the projects are going to change. And I'll wear my George Swift hat and say there's more to come. So take this with a grain of salt. Know that this is based on the best information we have, but it's going to change going forward. And so as we get into this, and I know it's a lot of numbers, I'm going to give you some things to focus on, and I want to walk you briefly through the methodology. We're going to start with the categories on the left and kind of go through the mathematics. I promise it's not Common Core. This is basic adding and subtracting. So we began with the total number of jobs both on the permanent and the construction side. Direct jobs, indirect jobs, and induced jobs. How many total jobs do we have? And are these jobs that are going to be here just for construction, or are these going to be operations, maybe you call them permanent jobs? We backed out from those numbers the traveling journeyman. Industry all along has been very forthright and said, we cannot provide the number of trained journeymen that these projects are going to require. Typically, these folks travel from all over the country to work for construction jobs. Industry has said that average is about 70% on any given large construction project. And so we said those people are going to come to the projects not because the lack of people, but because the lack of people that have the necessary skills that we're going to need. So that fourth line is total local jobs for both phases. Those are the jobs that we need to fill with people here in Lake Charles, here in Southwest Louisiana, excuse me. We backed out from that what we called the Southwest Louisiana labor resource. That's the number of people we think could be put to work from the 5-parish region here. So we subtracted from that the total local jobs minus the number of people available in Southwest Louisiana to say, okay, after operations or permanent jobs, how many people are left to be put to work? After the construction jobs, how many people are left to put to work? The most important thing in that top chart is the bottom line, and are the numbers red or black? The red numbers tell us that people must move into the area, must immigrate into the area to fill the jobs, period. So from 2017 through 2022, people will have to move here in order to fill all of the jobs. That's after we've put all of the local people that we think are available in the labor market to work. So I would argue that we've been pretty conservative in our assumptions to get to this point. because not all of the local people will be able to get a job. Not all of them will have the qualifications for every specific job. Some of these jobs are going to require very highly trained, highly skilled people that may have to come from other parts of the country. And so the bottom chart takes the number of people that have to immigrate for these construction jobs and adds to it those traveling journeymen we talked about, because those people are going to need housing as well. The bottom line is the peak is 2017, and we think it's about 20,000 people that will need temporary housing in Southwest Louisiana. 20,000 people will need temporary housing in Southwest Louisiana. That's a big number, folks. So then we get to where will these people work? Because it's not just a matter of providing a place for these folks to live, but that place has to be proximate to where they're going to work. It's got to be economic for that person to live wherever they're going to live. We can't say somebody living at the south end of Beauregard Parish is going to commute to South Cameron every day. That's just not going to happen. So we've divided the employment locales based on the major projects. So you've got a group of projects in South Cameron. I think you could probably argue that the east and west side of the ship channel should be different dots. For this, we called it the South Cameron projects. Moving north up the ship channel, we've got the projects on the west side in Hackberry and South Carlos. The same thing on the east side of the ship channel, south of Lake Charles. And then you've got the cluster of projects in the Westlake area. So 4 pretty distinct geographic areas that are going to require housing for construction workers. So then we looked at the supply. How many dwelling units do we have already? How many of these people can we house today without doing anything else? So we started with the hotel motels. We made a series of assumptions. We added into that the RVs and the campgrounds. I want to make it very clear, we did not assume that you could fill 100% of the hotel rooms and 100% of the campground spots in Southwest Louisiana for construction workers. If we did that, you begin to jeopardize all of the tourism, you jeopardize the baseball tournaments, the basketball tournaments, the things that have come to add to the quality of life here. So we made a series of assumptions you can find in the report. We added to that the worker villages that have been permitted. We did not say whether they were good or bad. We didn't say were they commercially viable. We simply said, do they have a permit? Once they have a permit, how many rooms did they say they could provide? How many people did they say they could house? And so when you add those numbers up, it's pretty consistently around 9,000, 9,500. As we move out in time, those numbers begin to reduce down simply because I began subtracting the worker villages, because as the demand goes down, I think the idea is that the worker villages begin to get disassembled and go away. So when you merge those two things together, here's what we find. I'm going to skip all the way to the bottom. We've done the math on the rest of it. You've got a big unmet demand beginning in 2016, peaking in 2017, and declining in 2018. But in those 3 years at the peak, we're short almost 10,000 housing units. 10,000 housing units. So then the question becomes, we've got 3 years, maybe 4 if projects drag out, but we know that's not going to happen. How do you meet that need? Do we encourage more hotels, motels to build, permanent housing, apartment complexes, things that don't go away when these 10,000 people pack up and go home? Or the other 10,000 that we've met already? Or do we begin to look for solutions that are more temporary in nature, that can be scaled up to meet the demand and then scaled down and go away as the demand goes away? To me, that's an easy question. I think nobody with a straight face would say, let's build permanent infrastructure for a temporary need. I think most of us, maybe all of us, would agree that if the need is temporary, then let's find a temporary solution. But what if we don't? So I've listed here some consequences of what happens if needs don't get met in a way that's sustainable. What if we choose to not do anything? Or what if we choose to build a bunch of permanent infrastructure? these are just some of the consequences. I won't pretend this list is exhaustive, but I think as you read this, you see this doesn't paint a pretty picture. And what's worse is most of these impacts work with one another and become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so my challenge to you guys as you think about it is this the type of community we want to live in? I know my answer is no. Another alternative would be for some of the plants to say, guys, we gave it our best shot. We were committed on our side. We did our engineering and design, but we can't get people to work if you're not going to house them, so we're going to go build our project in Corpus Christi or Mobile. That could happen. So we can either meet the need in a way that's sustainable. We can choose not to meet the need. We can meet it with a temporary need with permanent fixtures, or we can watch our projects go away. As I see it, those are sort of the choices we have. So I'm going to be very clear in my recommendations, and I think I've been leading up to this. I think all of us need to embrace the concept of worker villages as the preferred alternative. It's not perfect, but I think out of the choices we have, it's clearly the best of a bad situation. Once we agree on that, let's identify what are the most appropriate locations for worker villages. It shouldn't be a secret. It shouldn't depend on which district it's in or what parish it's in. Where are the locations that make the most sense, that impact the least amount of residents in our area, that still make the projects viable, and also let our workers have a quality of life? Let's not forget that the people coming to this area for jobs want some quality of life as well. They don't want to spend an hour each way on a bus to go and work hard and make a living. I know I've got family members that have worked in other parts of the country, and they go to those places to work and make a living. So let's not forget about that. And then finally, let's establish very clear, consistent construction and operation regulations. What are the ground rules? Let's make sure everybody's required to play by the same set of rules. And then industry and the project developers are going to let the free market decide what the best projects are, what the best locations are. But I think it's incumbent on us, on government, to say, this is the expectations of all of you. This is the landscaping expectations, the lighting, the security, the location, the fencing, all of those things. And it needs to be consistent. It doesn't need to be case by case. There are some elements that are unique to each project, but overall, when somebody comes in to do a project, they should be able to understand very clearly, this is what it's going to take to build worker villages in Calcasieu Parish, in Cameron Parish, in Jeff Davis Parish, wherever it is. They need to have the ability to understand what's going to be required of them before they go and invest a great deal of time and money, and or go out and deal with a public engagement process where the public begins to really get engaged for a project they may not fully understand. Or in some cases, they may understand it and just not like it, and that's going to happen. It will continue to happen. But I think when you understand the alternatives, you understand how these worker villages are managed, how they've been operated in other places, that the sheriff has visited them and said a well-run worker village is not necessarily indicative of an increase in crime, I think then it begins to become a pretty clear alternative. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation and turn it back over to Hal.
Thank you. I'm going to give this microphone, JB, where you at? We're going to move it over here, and if you come to the microphone, if you'll state your name and then ask your question, and then we're going to use this mic up here to have the answers. I'd ask the people that have done the presentations to come up here into these seats. Mike, Stevie, if y'all come over here, that way if we have questions, that way they can rapidly be here for the answers. So do that, JB. Anyone that would like to ask me questions, if you'll come to the microphone, stand right there.
I'll take that.
And say your name, and we'll get the right person up here to address the question. Yes, 1, 2. It's a little hot right here, but we're going to use this mic. Your name, sir?
Charlie Atherton. If I understood correctly, the police jury's added 4 new layers of go group, four different committees, the ones that reported out a while ago.
Really try to address that.
Mr. Atherton, what was added was the 4 task forces that are working with the steering committee and the subcommittees that have been.
Okay, now my question would be, are these particular meetings, when these groups meet, are they open to the public? And are they advertised so if the public wants to attend, they may attend? Because what we're having is we're going to wind up with a disconnect between the public as you move forward.
Here's the 4 groups. They have committees, and we will have these steering committees, and these groups will report to the steering committees, and we'll have public meetings like this, so we can communicate what's come out of these meetings at that point in time, Charlie. I guess you're addressing that you would like to come to some of these meetings. Are they open to the public?
Right. Are these particular 4 meetings, are they going to be open for the public to attend as each one of these groups meet?
Charlie, the way this is set up, each of those task forces understands and get good guidance. Karen attends those, CSRS is still involved. They have to learn on their own. The answer, they're not public meetings, but they're going to have the process as they go along and hold their own public meetings because they want to get input. As a matter of fact, I think over the next few months, you're going to see a lot of that. But each meeting, I mean, we're talking groups of 5 to 8 people doing, frankly, what I would call grunt work, which you need to do. They're not really public settings, but there's going to be plenty of public opportunity. No, those aren't public meetings like this.
Is there any way I can get put on these 4 groups?
Well, I can tell you each one of them is going to be reaching out. We purposely kept those numbers small, so those have pretty much been assigned. But as they go forward, they're going to be pulling in a lot of help. And I think by your announcing that, you're letting the ones who are here, and we'll certainly make it known. Charlie's interested. If you have a particular one you like more than others, we'll make sure you keyed into that. Because they want, one of the key things in Karen is she can't do everything all at once, but we recognize a regular communication to the public on what the Go Group's doing is critical, and we're going to be getting better at that. We have a little more staff help.
Well, can you film these particular meetings for the government channel?
Well, this one's being filmed.
No, I mean, I'm talking about these new 4 new groups.
Well, you don't have that plan right now, Charlie. These are, frankly, people sitting around a conference room sharing ideas. It's not really public meetings. It's sort of like, what is it, making the sausage, you know? You got to do a little work before you're ready to go to the public who expects something to report. And there's nothing to report until they put some things together. They literally just got started over the last couple of months, not even that long ago.
Yeah, because we started off with 10 groups, and I got on 5 of them, but a lot of them never met. And then of those initial groups, they really weren't advertised to the public, even though they were open to the public. But my concern is that what's happened is you're actually having a disconnect from the general public as you move forward. And at some point, you're going to be in deep trouble if you come back asking for new taxes for anything that comes out of these groups, because you've basically alienated the public. They're not going to feel like they were a part of it. I'm just offering comments and suggestions.
We recognize that public input is a very important aspect, and we are going to amp that up.
But personally, I'd like to know when the meetings are, and I would personally like to sit in them. I don't have to participate, but I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you're doing here in being proactive in trying to recognize the concerns and the problems that some of them we're going to face, and looking at the what if, that we may face. just to comment on the worker housing, there's also the concern for the lack of public transportation and maybe the ability of the people that may be living in the temporary housing to be able to share their tax dollars throughout the 5 parish area rather than having to buy from the company store. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other questions? Go ahead. Yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind just saying your name.
I'm W.L. Perkins. My question is, what zoning classification would this property have to be under to build one of these temporary housing?
Wes is here, our head of zoning planning. He's going to come up here and give you that information. You can just do it there, Mike. Go ahead, that'll be fine.
Yes, sir.
I'm Wes Crane. I'm the Director of Planning for Calcasieu Parish Police.
Okay, we got that out of the way.
Sorry. Didn't mean to disturb that. Is it still on? Oh. So the temporary workforce housing facilities, what we would prefer them to be located in, the zoning classifications are either I-1 or I-2, which is light industrial or heavy industrial. And really just briefly the process, if they are located in these particular districts, zoning districts, those districts allow residential uses as a zoning exception. So it's if they're locating in those areas, those zones, then it's a one-time zoning hearing. They go before the Planning and Zoning Board to be approved. If they're not located in those areas and they have to be rezoned, it's a two-step process, which means that they have to go before the Planning and Zoning Board and then ratified by the police jury. So we would prefer them to be located in either light industrial or heavy industrial areas. And that's what we prefer. Thank you.
Good. Ryan, would you like to comment on that from Cameron Parish? You okay? All right. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, I guess it does. I was thinking about mixed residential. Would it fall? It wouldn't fall under that.
Wes?
Mixed residential, we don't particularly have that zoning classification in the unincorporated areas of the parish. There is a mixed use district in the city of Lake Charles, and so I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
I have property outside the city, and it is zoned mixed residential.
You're referring to neighborhood district where it allows
south of Sulphur.
Yes, sir. It's probably a neighborhood district.
Go ahead and get to the microphone so we can hear what he's saying. If you go to the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Well, the property I'm talking about is south of Sulphur. It borders the Hackberry Highway, and it's out of the city limits, but it is zoned, and I've checked with the zoning board, and it is zoned as mixed residential.
Wes?
Well, the mixed residential is R2. Which is mixed residential it's an R2 zoning classification. If that's the case, we would still prefer it to be in a light industrial or a heavy industrial classification.
Would have to be rezoned.
That's correct.
That would not qualify.
No, sir. It would have to be rezoned.
Have to be rezoned. Any other, Brian? From the microphone, grab that microphone. And say your name.
Ryan Boryak, Cameron Parish Administrator. Being you threw me to the wolves, Hal. We have no zoning or land use ordinance in the parish, so that's an easy answer.
Easy answer. Very good. Any other questions tonight? I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. We'll keep conducting the intermeetings, the steering committee meetings, and we'll have another public meeting. We'll let everybody know. Thank you for coming out tonight. The Go Group is working hard. God bless you. God bless South